Yesterday, it was discussed about the most tortured sports fan base.
Yeah, Bill Simmons on his podcast got a
basically
question in
said
his mailbag.
The Knicks now are off the hook as the most tortured fan base in all of sports, which I just didn't see it ever in the first place. But let's talk about that. I didn't think it was the Knicks now. Who is the most tortured sports fan base right now?
I don't even accept the premise because most sports fans root for more than just one team in a city.
Yeah, I agree with
that. So I think the premise is stupid.
If you did play it off of one team, though.
If you just play it off the one team, to me, obviously I'm a little biased, but right now, today, it's the Guardians fan base.
I agree. Slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean
1948.
You've gone the longest. Has any team gone longer in any sport?
Well, there are teams that have never won a championship, so you could claim that they're. But the reason I think Cleveland is more tortured than those that have never experienced it, because there were glory years of sports in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Cleveland. You had a dominant Indians franchise that had an unbelievable starting rotation. You had not just the World Series championship in 48, but you had in 54, they made it to the World Series and famously were swept after winning like 111 games in the regular season. And then you had the Jim Brown dynasty of the 60s with the Browns.
Jay, you're combining. If we combine, I can't say Cleveland because we just won 10 years ago.
Right, but what I'm saying is comparing it to other cities that haven't, like Minneapolis has these pro sports teams.
Yeah.
But they had the Lakers. I'm pretty sure the Minneapolis Lakers won NBA championships before they moved to Los Angeles.
A long time ago.
It was in the 50s or 60s. It was a long time ago, but the 48 is a lot longer than the 50s.
Why would the Cowboys even be on that list?
I laughed at that.
That's absurd.
They mentioned the Cowboys. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Well, that's insane.
The Cowboys, they won, 4 champions? 3? How many did they win?
Maple Leafs is legit. I remember when I was up in Toronto for some of the NBA playoff games, and they talked about how passionate hockey fans are in
their
Toronto.
religion.
Yeah. But I'll tell you one that's not on there, that first one that came to mind, if you want to talk about tortured, if we're just going by specific team.
Yeah.
Seattle Supersonics fans, because they got screwed.
Yeah, they lost their team.
I mean, and through no fault of their own.
Right.
It was money and it was funding for a new arena. That is a passionate fan base. It's a shame. It's a disgrace that
they'll be the next city to get an NBA
They
franchise.
better be. They should have been back before now.
It's a crime that they have.
And so, like, if you're going to talk about like specific team franchise tortured fans, it's sort of like the Browns. They lost their team through no fault of their own. They didn't do anything wrong.
The Mariners have never won a World Series. Now, Seahawks obviously just won the Super Bowl, but the sports fans in Seattle are nuts. They're great. I don't care what the sport is. Yeah. They've got a soccer team that they go crazy for.
I went to a WNBA game in Seattle before it was big like it is now. This was probably almost 20 years ago.
It probably went nuts.
It was a packed house.
Yeah.
Packed house.
Great.
When nobody else was doing well in the WNBA at the time.
But there was an argument made that, it can't be Buffalo because they're a small town.
Yeah, that's
stupid. Now that doesn't hold any water to me.
Mike is obsessed with Bill Simmons. I'm personally not a Bill Simmons fan. I don't like him at all. But so you bring up Bill Simmons stuff.
Mike is in that era of people who love Bill, that age group.
Just the fact that he would suggest that the Cowboys fans are the most tortured fan base.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Is patently absurd.
Mike listens to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are absurd.
I don't love Simmons either. Yeah. I'm not a big
Where do you think the Browns rank on this, though? Like Browns fans?
Well, so let's just talk about the other football teams that were on the list. Cowboys, they've won how many championships since the Browns won their last?
Well, what
have they won? 6?
They've won since I've been alive. So I think
and they've won 3 times since you've been alive.
How are the Jets not on there?
Well, the Jets won in 69.
Okay.
I know, but when you look at...
But the Jets got to be... It's the Jets and the Browns for football.
Well, I would say even more, but the Jets won a Super Bowl.
Well, what about
we haven't played in a Super Bowl.
Jay, the Arizona Cardinals have the longest title drought in the NFL. They won the 1947 title matchup, haven't won since.
Oh, okay.
But no one cares about the Arizona Cardinals.
No one does because they were also the St. Louis Cardinals.
And
the Browns are number 1 in football. The Jets are number 2.
I'll give you that.
And then I'd put the Cardinals probably number 3. And Detroit.
Detroit's got to be up there.
They've been competitive, but they haven't gone to a Super Bowl.
No, I mean, you could probably put Detroit and Cleveland in the same sentence because Detroit was also very, very good. They were a pillar of the NFL in the 50s.
Now, where do you put Buffalo and Cincinnati? Bengals have been to the Super Bowl 3 times, Bills 4 times, but neither has ever won.
And Atlanta was up 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
No, those teams are next after this first
they're
group.
in the next group.
Yeah.
But I can put the Cowboys in that group. You're blinded by your rings.
Yeah,
I can't feel sorry for you.
Cleveland was until the Cavs won the championship, Cleveland was by far the most tortured fan base. Yes. There was not a close second.
You know who finished second? When I was on Cold Pizza, we did like a 10-week series where we first selected it down to the 10 most tortured.
Yeah.
And the second was Buffalo, and Seattle was third, I believe, and Cleveland was first.
Well, at that time, had Seattle won? Was that before all the Seattle championships in the NFL? With Russell Wilson?
They won the 13.
Yeah, no, it was before Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
It was like 2004 when we did it.
Yeah, I would have put Seattle actually in that time. I would have put them ahead of Buffalo.
Cleveland, yeah.
No, not ahead of Cleveland.
Okay.
I would have still had Cleveland.
They might have been second. I can't remember.
Seattle 2, Buffalo 3, and then what was 4? Minneapolis.
Minneapolis was in there. Cleveland was number 1.
Had to be.
We came and did a show.
We're not number 1 as a city anymore.
No, because the Cavs have won in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And
so what city would you put number 1, Bull? Is it Minneapolis?
Minneapolis, yeah.
Or
Buffalo.
Seattle makes a strong case, too. But, I mean, they just won.
Yeah, but Seattle's won 3 Super Bowls in the last 10 years.
I thought they won 2.
2 Super Bowls.
2, sorry. Yeah, 2.
Yeah, but still, you can't count them as. But I think Minneapolis, too, because Minneapolis.
Or Buffalo.
Minneapolis
Charlotte. What's Charlotte done? I mean, nobody ever talks about Charlotte as a great sports town. But
Panthers,
the Panthers are horrible. The Hornets have always been horrible.
Yeah.
Hornets have never been any good.
And they have
they
just won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, they did. You're right.
Yeah,
yesterday.
Right. 2 days ago, whenever it was.
I don't ever pay attention to hockey.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to hockey.
But it counts.
But it
counts. Yeah.
But yeah, for cities, it's
Minneapolis.
Yeah, Minneapolis and Buffalo, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while since the Bengals have never won a Super Bowl. The Reds haven't won a World Series.
Detroit?
Oh, that's true.
When did the
91 maybe?
When did the Red Wings win? When's their last?
Oh,
I
guess
and
they
the
won
Pistons
recently.
won.
And the Tigers have won too. I mean, 84.
Honestly, before this year, if you were a New York Mets, Jets, Knicks fan, that was one of the worst droughts because it had been 40 years before this year.
Yeah, you'd got to go back to 86.
Now, if you're Yankees or Giants, I don't want to hear from you about the Knicks.
Either.
I don't care.
You know what's funny? We were talking about Cavs, and obviously the anniversary's coming up on Friday. I don't think anyone really talks or feels awful about the Indians blowing a 3-1 lead.
Because the Cavs.
Because the Cavs.
Yeah.
The Indians were 1-1 away from World Series championship.
Yeah.
We talk about Game 7 in '97 all the time, and the Marlins and how devastating that was and all that. They had a 3-1 lead, 1 win from World Series. Yeah. Nobody talks about it.
I do.
Nobody where? What do you mean?
Nationally.
Well, even here. How many people talk about the Guardians, or the Indians, whatever you want to call them? Cleveland was 1 win away, and what a horrible collapse it was.
Yeah, trust me, I hear about it all the time.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Well,
I never hear anyone.
Yeah.
Well,
but I hear about it too. I'll never forget it. To me, that was
the Cavs overshowed everything that happened because people were still drunk in October.
Right. Had the Cavs not won, it would have been even worse.
That would have been crippling.
Oh, it would have been even worse.
It would have been devastating.
But because the Cavs won, everyone was like, meh.
Yeah, we were still on our championship hangover.
Yeah.
It was only 4 months later that we did the same thing. We blew a 3-1.
Yeah. And obviously before 16, the Cubs were the most tortured fan base. Individual team.
Yeah, you're right.
Individual
we should
team.
do a poll, Mike, at some point and make it more than like a flash 30-minute poll. We should at some point ask which of the Cleveland disappointments rank number 1 for you. And I know a lot of people would say, you'd have to be of a certain age to remember it, but the drive and the fumble, and those used to be my benchmarks for the most. But
I know what yours is.
The 3-1 collapse in 2016 is first, and then losing in extra innings in 97 was second, and 95 was third.
We could do
baseball's your favorite.
That's it. I just want to see a baseball championship.
We'll set up this time. We'll do like a little bracket of the
that's a good idea.
Factory of Sadness.
Yeah, you could. I wonder. You could easily come up with 8, but could we come up with 16 Cleveland heartbreak moments?
Oh,
16?
16?
No problem.
Easy. Yeah, but but when you get to 14, 15,
Red right 88, the fumble, the drive.
No, you're easily going to get to 8. You're easily going to get to 8.
We could get 16. We could get to 16.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's come up with the top 16 most disappointing moments in Cleveland sports history. We'll do a blind draw.
Browns leaving.
Because you don't want to seed. You just do a blind draw. Now, you could get the 16 collapse versus the 97 Indians, in the first round.
Can you bundle the 15 Cavs injuries of Kyrie's knee blowing out?
Yeah, that would count.
With Kevin's
yeah,
shoulder?
because that team, people thought that team was better, or at least. So yeah, you could probably come up with 16.
Kevin
Let's
Durant
make a
joining the
bracket.
Warriors.
We'll have our fans vote on each matchup for round 1.
I like it.
Then we'll advance it to round
That's
2,
good.
and we can leave. We can draw this out all through the off season here in
summer.
football.
Yeah.
I love it.
There we go.